something different, something new, something better. We just had the Puerto Rico National Championships yesterday. It was a long day, but a successful event. And in memory of this stride that Puerto Rico is doing to make the sport better, not only here in Puerto Rico but all over and places close to us, we are starting this new style podcast, and I have the wonderful company of the president of our Continental Federation, North American Arm Wrestling Federation, and the vice president of the World Arm Wrestling Federation, Simon Berriochoa, accompanying me today because he was yesterday with us all day, helping us on the event. And we are going to have a good conversation, getting to know who he is and what he's doing and what he has accomplished. But first of all, Simon, how you doing?
I'm doing well, and you good? As
Well, I'm
long as
really,
you
really
put
tired.
you put a lot into yesterday, so obviously it would be expected if you're a little tired.
Yeah. But anyway, how was your experience from yesterday of the national championship?
Yeah, I mean, it really was phenomenal. I think what I really enjoy so much about coming into various countries and helping with getting involved in the events in the various countries in North America is just seeing that passion again for arm wrestling. That for a lot of people who've been doing it for a very long time, it's kind of disappeared, right? So at
Yeah.
sometimes, right? So it's a little harder to. It's a lot of work, it's a lot of time, it's a lot of travel, and you just kind of see how some of the stuff's have become, some of the items have become a little more business oriented, and
Yeah.
to see a lot of the it was incredible to see your old guard of legends you had here from Puerto Rico show up and be a part of the event and be recognized, and then get the homage that was paid to them, along with the just passionate young athletes that you have here in Puerto Rico. They were extremely talented pullers there. Even the guys who were kind of in the first timer bucket, the
Yeah.
novices, you could tell they put a lot of work into this. They're really good doing, and I think it was interesting. And obviously, as you knew, I mean, you'll see from people that watch it is ref the entire day, and so
Yeah.
I got to see it up close and personal, right? So I was there watching them and watching them kind of style their craft a little bit and see what they were doing and helping, right? And trying, I think there was a part of it was to be able to kind of introduce them to the world of, you know, continental championships, world championships, other
Yeah.
international events that, maybe they haven't had any exposure to yet, but it's what's coming for Puerto Rico, right? Because you're building a really good program here. And I think it's as this is gelling right now, it's going to become the kind of organizations that we have elsewhere in North America, where really strong. You start having a lot of people going to worlds and going to other national events. You can see it. You can see it's coming, and I think congratulations to you on what you put together here, and not only yesterday, but what you're driving here, because this is what's going to make arm wrestling great in Puerto Rico.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. It's hard work, and I appreciate your kind. I appreciate your kind words towards the event yesterday, and I really thank you that you came all the way down here to help me and help us get this done. And we everyone appreciated your presence and what you guys did, and everyone is really motivated for what's coming next, because that's what we're building. That's what NAF is. That's what WAF is. Like Chris said, it's a destination. It's something more than just weekend tournaments. It's the offer of go beyond that tournament and keep going up and up in level, like you said, continental championships, world championships, and yet we are on the way to Olympic level events. So thank you for your kind words, and thank you, and Valerie, and Chris, that were here to help. We really appreciate it. So now, Simon Berriochoa is one of my heroes. Like, I've seen it, I've said it many times, and I will keep saying it because it's true. Like, I remember when he contacted me for the first time, I was like, "Who are you? You remember that?" I was
I
like,
do.
No, 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 you're not who? Simon who? No, I didn't believe it. I didn't believe it. So he had to prove that he was Simon Berriochoa uh, to me. And when it was sure that it was him, I remember I got tears in my eyes because I was so emotional. I was, this man is one of my heroes. So I want people to look at you, and when they hear the name of Simon Berriochoa, know what you've done to the sport. And it's kind of wanna I want you guys to see Simon through my eyes. You know, uh, Simon, how do you got into arm wrestler?
So I mean, I'd played sports all my life, and it wasn't anything I could, whether it was combat sports, football, basketball, baseball, rodeo. I did all kinds of stuff, and wrestling, and I happened to go. It was summer of July of 1987. I had just graduated high school, and I'd gone to a bench press contest out of the Kit Carson Days fairs in northern Nevada, Carson City, and I won the bench press contest for my weight, and I was kind of walking off after they gave me my little trophy and whatnot. And this guy calls me over, and he acts like he's trying to sell me a watch, right? He's like, "Hey, come here, come here." I'm like, "All right, what does this guy want?" And it turned out to be Steve Simons, who was the head of the WPAA arm wrestling, the World Professional Arm Wrestling Association, and he was putting on a tournament the next day. And he said, "Man, you look like you're pretty strong. Would you like to do arm wrestling tomorrow?" I said, "Yeah, sure. I'm thrilled to come back and go and do something else, right?" And my brother and I had always arm wrestled as kids. I mean, he'd always beat me left-handed, always beat him right-handed, and my brother's a bit bigger than me and height-wise and whatnot. But there was actually this weird little pizza place that oddly had. I still to this day don't know why they had an arm wrestling table in it. We would go there, and we waste all the quarters my parents gave us and stuff to the video games.
Uh-huh.
We mess around on the arm wrestling table, and again, no clue why they had one. I always think back now. I wish I would have found out, like, and inquired of like, why do you guys have an arm wrestling table here? But because it was, back then, that was uncommon. Like, you had to really be into arm wrestling to have an arm wrestling table because you built it yourself. There was
Yeah.
nobody making them, right, and selling to people. So, the way you do it now, you just anybody who sees it on the internet can go order one off the internet and go get a table. So we used to mess around that table. And so I went back the next day to that arm wrestling tournament, and I won the lightweight. We only had right-handed classes back then. We really
Yeah.
didn't have a lot of.
Because nobody cares about left.
No, yeah, nobody cares. Yeah. As I say, men don't actually arm wrestle left-handed.
Yeah.
So we I won the lightweight class, and I met a bunch of actual real arm wrestlers at that time. Dale Hawkins and Chuck Kendricks, and these are guys, old timers that have been around forever. Chuck's up in the Reno area, and so got really interested, right? So I started training with them, and I arm wrestled for a bit, because I was going off to California, obviously, go to school, and as I started doing it, did some tournaments, and one of the interesting stories is I was just always stronger than most people my size, like from an arm wrestling perspective, and but I didn't really know anything about arm wrestling. It was not like even though I was training with those guys, I don't recall ever like getting heavily into technique or, learning a lot of the ins and outs of it. And I went to the Sands that same year, the Sands tournament, which was an old Bob Howell used to put that on every year, and it was a big fan favorite. All the great legends all went to that tournament: Brezink and Dave Patton and Cobra and Fisher, and I ended up pulling Dave Patton there. I mean, one of the great lightweights of all time. And when he posted up against me, I didn't even know what he was doing was legal. Like, I did not expect it. I didn't understand what was going to happen. Like, I was just going to do my smash to the left, and that's what I did. And he had posted me up, completely like this. And as I chased him, he just kept taking more and more and more and more. And I'm looking around like, is he allowed to do this? I don't know. This doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, that's how naive I was about arm wrestling. Yet I was
Yeah.
pulling in pro classes with a guy like Dave Patton. Um, and I guess out of pure ignorance, you just kind of like, I can arm wrestle. I don't care. Like, you just went. I didn't
Yeah.
really like overthink what I was doing. And so that was quite a lesson to me because, like, they always people talk about the guys who've never lost, right? So that's when I lost, and I went, okay, like
Yeah.
this is, I don't know what this is about, what's going on. So kind of went further from there to I ended up training and training and training for that back pressure that Dave had. And so I met him again at the Petaluma Championships. and I was determined this time. Like I knew, okay, he's what he's going to do. So I trained and trained and trained. So I had this great just bash back up high, and then I realized I did not know how to do anything else after that. Like I was just stuck there, and so it just went badly as well, right? So Dave, he's one of those guys, and one of the most incredible technicians you're ever going to see in the sport. And again, I ended up losing, and so I did some arm wrestling tournaments here and there. With the WPA, I did even that year. I won like the WPA World Championship that year, later that year, and in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I think that's where we were. And again, just out of purely kind of just being stronger than most people. Dave wasn't there. Like I just was stronger than most people who were kind of the weight. And I think I was actually a little bit lighter weight too. Um, but eventually, I was going off to California and go to school, and I like couldn't keep arm wrestling and try to play football because I can't get injured
Yeah.
when I'm supposed to be doing something else. So I kind of took this hiatus from it, and after I left that, got out of school, I was playing semi-pro football, and I was living in Los Angeles, and I got to a place where their sports I loved playing, anything, right? We softball leagues. I was playing. Like I said, I played semi-pro football, playing basketball leagues. I would anything to play a sport, and I was living in Los Angeles, and the rec sports were terrible. It was just there's no once everybody goes home in Los Angeles, nobody comes back out, right? Because the traffic's too bad.
Hmm.
So if you have an 8 o'clock game, 3-on-3 basketball 8 o'clock game, don't even bother going because you're not going to get three guys from the other team to show up just because people just don't show up. And so I went looking for something to when I could do more myself, right? At the time, I really wasn't interested in going back into fighting, but it was still back. It was kata fighting still, right back then, even back then. So it wasn't like you didn't really have that good competition. I had boxed as well, um, and I just was like, I need to find a sport that I can do, something where I'm not have to worry about anybody else. And I started looking, researching and trying to find stuff, and I found this weird. There was a tournament going on in this town called Yermo, and I was living in Los Angeles at the time. And I was like, well, I don't even know where that is, but okay, this is a lead to somebody that I can start to find out about. And oddly enough, I was going to Vegas that weekend, drove from Los Angeles to Vegas. As I'm driving, I see a sign for Yermo. Yermo is a little town between Los Angeles and Vegas. Yermo, I think it's Yermo, Nevada. And I go, shit, okay. And I just take the exit, and I show up there late enough that the event's over, but they have flyers for other arm wrestling tournaments. And so I picked it. And that's the way we used to do it back in the day,
Yeah.
right? All you had was a flyer from the last place you went to go someplace else.
Yeah.
It was really, you didn't have the internet to tell you where you were going to go or what the next event was going to be. And so I grabbed the flyers and started going back into arm wrestling again. And back then, I started cutting down from about 70 kilos to 60 kilos um, being a lighter weight arm wrestler, just because, again, you start trying to get serious about it. You think I don't want to be any bigger than I need to be
Yeah.
back then. And that's kind of what got me started, actually, just kind of back into the sport of arm wrestling again. And I'd gone through just, very interesting times of going through like the kind of the navigating the different things that were out there in the sport. Because as you know, even, back then you had the AAA, you had the WPA was still out there, you had USA, USAA, and that's just a few of them, right, that were still going on at the time.
Yeah.
So you start finding your way through like what all these things are. And I kept, I just stayed at it. It was just something I was very interested in doing, and I was good. Like I'd still do. I was doing really well. But the interesting thing is, I didn't really. It took me a long time, I think, still to really learn arm wrestling, for a couple of reasons. One is I didn't really have the infrastructure of the groups that people do now to be able to train with and get stuff from experienced people. And I think two, um, my size cutting down to like 60 kilos, it was a little bit limiting in the styles I could do. I was a drop hooker. I'd catch everything on my bicep and then just side pressure through everybody. And that's basically what I did. Not because that was some technique I learned, just because that felt natural in the process of arm wrestling to me. And, so I'd gone through all those things, eventually I started, going to national championships, US national championships, and competing and winning classes there, which led to going to the world championships. And honestly, like, and again, for people who might know some of the ins and outs of the politics that are going on now, really people like, Denise and Leonard from the USAA, they were kind of mentors to me in the sport around kind of the rest of it, right? Because there was, and Bill Collins was another one, and oddly, getting into the politics of it was really accidental. We were going to South Africa for the World Championships, and I wasn't going to go. I had a work thing. I couldn't do it. I had won the national championship at 60 kilos, and but I was not going to go. And then pretty late, pretty close to when the event was going to come, it turned out that Dave Devoto, who was the then president of the USA, had it was ill and couldn't go, and I was asked if I would go to help and be and sit in his stead and represent the U.S. Um, and really, that's what started it all. Like once I got into that, then we ended up on my Bill and I were on the board of the USA, and then we worked on some things to change the name to USAF to create greater clarity between USA and USAA, because that was causing a little bit of problems when people didn't know the difference
Yeah.
between their Denise and Leonard's private event group and versus the national entity. And I just started. I've been to 21 World Championships now, um, and just started going regularly as much as I could. I mean, I had some injuries here where I had things where I didn't wasn't able to compete at some point in times during the course of that whole period. But I ended up becoming president of the United States Arm Wrestling Federation, and we ended up having a uh, just kind of difference, I think, in philosophy. I was going to tell you in the sport here, it's kind of that what got us here won't get us where we're going kind of thing, right? So we still, for the longest time in the sport, kept doing it the old way. And I think what happened, we could see how stale and stagnated we were. Like
Yeah.
you know, really when I took over, um, at that time, North Americans was just something on a piece of paper, right? The North American Arm Wrestling Federation was just a name on a piece of paper that existed because you had to have a continental federation to be able to have people who went to the World Federation. There was no North American Championships, really speak. People would put them on, call them Border Wars, or they would have like a North American Championship or something. They would call it that, but it really wasn't a nationalized team event. So it's one of the things we started really building, and we were building it before COVID, and then COVID hit, and obviously everything
Yeah.
stopped, and then we really came back once COVID got, we got past COVID and started really trying to drive these events so that we could have, again, the Central American Championships, North American Championships, Pan American Championships, World Combat Games. And I will tell you the big difference in 2012 in Brazil, we had a bit of a political regime change at the WF level, and this is where, because some Eastern European leaders took over as president and general secretary of the WF, they had much more influence on their governments and the sport in those countries, because in the U.S. one of the things we and even potentially North America in general we suffer from a bit is the fact that we have those major sports, right, that everyone sees on TV. That's what kids are playing in high school. You don't really most high schools in the U.S. you can't arm wrestle because they're afraid of injuries,
Yeah.
so they don't even let you do it like in the lunchroom or anything like we grew up doing all the time. And so they really, that Eastern European group, you have to credit them for the fact that they went out and started building and were able to get us certified. WADA, GAISF, FISU, the Paralympic Committee. Um, it's all those things that have made this grow to it's becoming, and it's just growing more and more every single year. We were growing in people, but we really weren't growing as organizations, and so everything really had to change. Like you had to have a different version of this in order to do it. And so I can't even tell you how many years I've been doing this from in this time, but that's how I kind of got really involved in the politics piece of it. And as the North American president, I'm the vice president of the World Arm Wrestling Federation as well. So I work with that executive committee from those continental countries and the president himself, Hassan. And as we start trying to craft everything we're doing in the sport. And I think this is where it's all taking a different version, and really where my vision is of what I think it needs to be compared to what you're seeing now. Because there's a lot of challenge matches, there's a lot of super matches, there's a lot of TV stuff, people doing
Yeah.
a lot of pay per view. The reality is, this is really the Olympic level of the sport of arm wrestling, and you have to kind of build it first, right? You're not going to get someone's going to hand you the Olympic ring and say, okay, now you're in the Olympics, go build everything. You have to be doing it that way to begin with. And I think that's the big difference of how we've transformed North America and the sport, the other continents as well, but really in North America, because this is where it all started, right? I mean,
Yeah.
and again, it's kind of that if you keep doing what you've done, you're not going to get to where you need to be, right?
Yeah.
It may have got you there where you were, but it's not going to get you any further. So that's kind of exactly how I've gotten to, kind of the political end of it. And, like most arm wrestlers, I'm not smart enough to, retire. So I continue to compete all the time despite surgeries and injuries.
Yeah.
You done, and,
It's like we were talking yesterday. Once you start and you build things, you start thinking, okay, if I go, who's gonna keep doing it? And that kinds of like it it doesn't let you escape because at the end we don't really we don't we don't really like what we do because we go to a like okay we like what we do, we love it, we're passionate of it, but I'm think we always have bad experiences and bad things, and we get angry and we don't agree in a lot of stuff, but we can't stop doing it because we feel like we're building something that it's
yeah.
almost done, and if we leave it will crumble.
Well, and I think that it's every time you think you're getting closer to the spot where it would be more, let's just say, viable for some other people to do things, then just the world continues to change, right? And so as those things happen, you have to. It's you unfortunately just can't turn loose of it, right? Because it's
Yeah.
going to be like I tell people all the time, and there used to be an old thing that was a really big deal, and again, I always blame Canada and the U.S. for starting this messy thing, to be quite honest, with this idea that like you had to have this board, and then the board had to vote, and then you had to have a president, and then that president then would make themselves if available to potentially be the president of North America, and then you would have a vote, and because it was always a tie, whoever the seating president was just kept himself as president, and this just went on and on and on and on. And we spent more cycles and rounds and time in all of that kind of voting nonsense, and that the
Yeah.
machinations that go into that than we did actually doing things for the sport. And I've told people this before. I said, some of the best organizations in the world are just flat owned by some guy. Like, frankly, if you look at, Igor Mazurenko, he's a different group now, but what he built in Poland was purely in the back of he had complete control over it. So he did what he thought was best. He brought it along, and he made a great program out of that, right? And I think you don't have that kind of everyone's worried about who's going to get, because in the end there's only so many people who are really willing to put in the work that you're talking about and do the things that need to get done. Like
Exactly.
if you're not going to worlds every year, you are further and further behind. Like you don't know what's going on. Things change that fast. The sport is growing so much, and it's just changing so much. And just being part of it to understand it. So, I had quite honestly, there was a lot of the board members that were with us originally in the USAF just weren't going. Like unless it was, we had the one in outside of Vegas in 2010, and they hadn't been for from that all the way up until probably when things kind of changed. I want to say that was in 2019 or something. So like you just can't be absent from it and still be a driving force and still understand what's moving the needle and what change is going to happen. And so I'd love to be honest. It really is my goal to try to get more people, and we're getting surrounded by more good people who really have the right interest in developing this as a true Olympic level national team sport, not worrying about the 6 tournaments that go on every weekend in the United States. And then, but getting good people who can step in and become, take this on. Like I'm going to, gone someday. I can't do this forever. So you just hope to get at the right place, get the right people involved with the right mindset, um, and rather than this idea that you're just going to keep trading people out through some representative democracy process where you're just, because every time you do that you're 2 steps back, right?
Yeah.
Because that person hasn't been involved, they don't know what's going on, and it's growing that fast that you just can't afford to lose the knowledge and the momentum you have that you've been building, right? And I
Yeah.
think that's going to be an important part of what's going to you see in the future of arm wrestling.
Well, I don't know. This what I'm going to say is related to Alexander the Great, and the quote is, uh, "The world would be great with just one good king," and that's
Yeah,
what we're
no,
thinking.
there was the last emperor logic, I think, too, where they were so busy they would the guy just decided in China that he would just wipe out all the other dynasties because the only way China was ever going to be viable was when they only had one leader,
Yeah.
because you just would never look. It's tough to do things by committee. It really is.
Yeah.
And people have different motivations for what you're doing. And
Motivations, agendas, and if you're in Puerto Rico, there's a saying: everybody wants the title, but nobody wants to put in the work. You know, you want to be president, you want to be vice president, you want to be secretary, and then you just sit in a chair and do nothing for the entirety of your, I don't know, you know.
yeah,
So when we talk and you approach me, it's just about the willingness to do the work,
yeah,
and that's I think, and I agree with you.
yeah,
It works that way because at the end, if you're doing the work, you're pushing the whatever it is that you're doing. You're the one pushing it, and you're doing the work. And these other people that might be in a committee are maybe they don't agree with you. They just stopped you for doing.
yeah. They have different agendas, and I think like look, and it was, it, you can only go so many year after year after year of coming up with ways to change things and then just getting outvoted on stuff. Like at some
Yeah,
point in time, even if it's not the greatest idea, right?
yeah,
Do something. And we were getting, and frankly, in the USAF, we were getting nothing done because everything that came up, everything I tried to build, every time I tried to fix, everything we were trying to
mm,
develop was there'd be some reason. Oh yeah, it sounds like a great idea. You do all the work, and then it gets shot down in the vote. And look, we still have those issues now, right? There's still issues now at the world level where you just get outvoted. That's what's going to happen. I mean,
yeah.
there's only so much you can do about that. But I think that model, unfortunately, again, where it's people feel as though they have this given right to be, a voice in what they're doing and have a vote, doesn't really work if people aren't all working towards the improvement of something. If they have different agendas, if they have different programs, if they, I've had everything from kind of the people who were so old school that they didn't like any kind of change, and so everything was no, 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 you can't do this stuff.
Exactly.
Obviously, you got to do that. You've got people who had their own programs they're running. They're too busy running their own events, right? And that was their focus. There used to actually be a rule in the books that said in the Constitution, USAF Constitution, that said that the USAF was only allowed to put on one single event ever, just the Nationals. That was the only thing it could do. And that was purely put in there by people who were trying to make sure the USF didn't proliferate into having other events that would conflict with their ability to put on events.
That's still happening today. I mean, in whatever I know in Latin America, the sport is really young. See, and that happens if someone is trying to get things done the way in the vision that we have, the other people that think like that, they try to how's the word? It's disinformation, just to stop you for doing what you're doing,
Yeah,
right? And it's kind of a virus that arm wrestling has. That people, certain people, not all people, certain people just are concentrating and doing their things, and I mean, there's a space for we live in a free country. There's a space for everyone. You can do your thing, but the thing is, like, they want to do their thing, but they don't want you to do yours.
yeah,
And they see a movement like this one has a threat on what they're doing, which is not, because this is a totally different thing. But they poke just to bring it down, or to create, because they worry, they see it like it has a threat, and those sorts of things are the things that slow the progress of the sport
sure.
to where we want it to be.
Yeah, they have. If you look at a lot of the what's gone on here at the WF level, which kind of then permeates throughout all the continental levels. What you're going to see, I always prided myself in is I wasn't a promoter, right? So I was never out trying to make money in arm wrestling, and I was an athlete, and I was an athlete who saw a need for
No, no,
people
no,
to
no.
have.
You are an athlete.
I still get, yeah, still not smart enough to quit yet, but yeah. But I think, I was always focused on the athletes, and that's something I have to remind a lot of people who get really heavily into the administrative pieces of this is about them. Without them, this none of this exists. You guys could do this all you wanted to. It doesn't matter. And so when you focus on the athletes, you have a different view of the way you're going to approach things, or what do you think is the right things to do. And I think, unfortunately, there were some things that were done where people did not focus on the athletes. Like I had a very simple when IFA popped up, right, and as a competitive organization to the WAF, they immediately asked me if I would be taking the U.S. to go, like, and this was IFA, if I would go bring the thing, bring the U.S. to IFA. And it's really, absolutely had them out. They were friends of mine and people I had known for quite some time. And it was really simple. It was never going to be the World Championships. It was not going to be in the best interest of my athletes and the athletes of North America to have to go that route, because it was never going to be what the WF is and what the WF is going to be. So the most important thing is creating those opportunities for the athletes to go to the World Championships and be, excel at what they're passionate about, what they want to do. And it would, to me, the people who did do those things, they like to say it was, well, they just, that we didn't like the politics they're doing, everything they were doing. But in the end, you have to say what is best for the athletes. So you endure a little politics. There's a running joke that we used to have all the time about, you go to a Worlds for an event, and the hotels were more expensive all of a sudden than they were if you were just booking them online yourself. And very smart man, Anders Axlo, was the president, who ended up becoming the president of IFAS, told me, but that is kind of the price you pay for getting your athletes the opportunity to be able to go to the World Championships and compete with the best in the world. I look at all the rest of this the same way, right? This, whatever you're dealing with and whatever we have to deal with, and look, if you know anything about any politics of any other sporting organizations, you're going to know there's a lot of complexity. There's a lot of things that don't go so well in those things, and you just keep trying to move forward. But it's all about the athletes and creating opportunities for them to excel at the sport at the world level, continental level, etc. And I think that's what you have to. So if you have to endure the other politics and the nonsense to be able to do that, then that's what you do. That's what a leader should be doing for the people. And so I really try to challenge people that, if they're not willing to do that, why? Like who are they thinking about? It's their personal vendetta. It's their personal thing. They have issue.
Exactly.
And again, if athletes want to go, knock yourself out. If that's where you want to go, that's what you want to do. That's the type of athlete you want to be. If you never want to go to the World Championships and test yourself against the best in the world because you're more of a hobbyist. Now, I had a guy,
Exactly.
then that's fine. You can do that, and there's a place in the sport. And we've seen how much it's changed, where we actually have arm wrestling fans now, which you never had. You had family members who showed up
Yeah.
and begrudgingly watch you again and again and again at all day long tournaments, right? It was great when you're competing, but the rest of it can be quite a wear on people who aren't involved. And now we have these fans who don't really even compete
You just
via
want to
social media.
watch.
They just want to watch, and they're involved, and they want to comment on it and talk about it. And we never had that before. So I did have to learn here not too recently that you sometimes people are just going to be hobbyists in the sport, because my focus was always what I would have as an athlete. I'm going to go against the best in the world, and I'm going to challenge myself. And I don't understand why you're doing this if you're not. And I did have to learn. James Reed actually kind of pointed it out to me, and I said, you know what, you're probably right, and maybe we have to think. And this is where we had to pivot again. This is where I started thinking differently about the athletes, even if they were hobbyists, and their path is not going to be the same as that person who wants to go and go to be part of truly
Yeah.
Team USA and
Yeah.
do it.
But the thing is that the people that don't really want to go that way that we're thinking about try to stop others from doing so.
There
And
are
that's
some,
that's that's
yeah.
where what's slowing the movement down. And like I say, there's space for everybody. You want to go that route, you want to do it that way, it's okay, but don't stop others from going or trying to achieve their dreams.
And they turn it into more of a us, our team, your team kind of thing. And I
Yeah.
think that's unfortunate. You with me or you with them kind of. And again, they have to back up and think about the sport. It is not only an individual sport, it's probably one of the most selfish sports I know in any sport I've ever been in. And I mean that from the perspective of every athlete wants the weight classes they want. They want the weigh-in times be what they want them to be. They want their class to be run in the event when they want it to be run in the event. They want the rules to suit them, the way they pull and how they're going to be most. So even though they are the greatest people I've ever been involved with from a sport perspective, without hands down, I've played a ton of sports, been involved in a lot of things. I've never met better people than arm wrestlers. You have a lot of fighting, a lot of combating. You're great friends after. I know people, tens of thousands of people over the world that I could go literally anywhere in the world, hit somebody up and say, "Hey, I'm coming to your city," and they put on a practice and they do it. Just incredible people. But it is a very individual and selfish sport from that perspective, because
Yeah.
it's all about getting what you want in the process. And so you have to be cognizant of that, right? Because those things start to spin, as you're saying, off into them trying to stop you from doing what you're doing, or they're trying to stop other people from doing because everybody wants it their way. And
Exactly.
that's why you have a ref script.
Yeah.
Because eventually you just say, if life just had a ref script, that'd probably be a
Yeah.
lot better if you just got to go,
Yeah.
no, you
Actually,
guys, I'm
yeah.
done with you guys. Like, we're going to do it my way now. And can, as a neutral
Exactly.
third party, that would probably help the sport politically, but unfortunately, we don't have that.
I wanted to ask you, how did you met, or when, or how was that you met Joey Costello?
So Joey Costello, and this goes back to about 2003, I think it was, 2002, 2003. I had become the U.S. national champion at 60 kilos right-handed, 132 pounds, and Joey was the Canadian national champion that same year. And so as we did back then, you just chase people down. Like, I don't care. You're going, you're going to spend money anyway. You're going to go, you're going to chase people down. And that's what I would do for other tournaments is I had people who had beaten me or people who I felt like, might be above me. I was going to go chase them down. And so that's exactly what I did with Joey. Kind of out of the blue, I figured out there's this tournament called the Gloucester Fair up in Canada that he was going to be competing at. And so I went up there. And again, I think I still have a trophy from it. So I
There's a
want to,
picture you can
yeah,
look it up into a NAAF social media. There's a picture of that day, I think.
yeah, it was that day. Joey and I looked like entirely different people, to be quite honest.
Yeah.
Um, and just went up to that event, and again, they were the host of the people who were the host, and that's where I met Lisa and Rich Blanchard, and they had me stay at their house, like dinner, like we were all immediately just kind of friends, even though I had really not known them before. I just reached out because I was going to be coming up, and I ended up competing with against Joey in three different classes at that event, and from that moment, Joey and I have always been kind of involved in driving the sport, and he's taken a very similar strong stand in Canada, right? And they're a huge part of what makes North America drive. Is Joey and Ashley's really their desire and willingness to think the same way. Like, they think the same way. This is what they want. They're tireless in it. They understand they're spending their own money to go do things. But it was that we recognized that, even though, as I said before, it was our fault for creating this weird vote everybody into hierarchy, who gets to be president this week kind of nonsense that people were doing, we realized that just wasn't effective. And we made a deal with ourselves and said, this is how we're going to do this. And we're going to set this thing right and put it in a different place for the next generation. So get people who would come in and be able to bring in people who were like-minded of the idea that it was going to be about the athletes, going to be about driving the sport and doing these things. And, like, as I said before, you really didn't have a lot of North American events. There were things that were called this, and we started driving them, and now it's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And we're going to have Central American Championships, the Pan American Championships. We came from just in Argentina. We did the World Combat Games, which was incredible. Where, I mean, literally in the same facility as Olympic gold medalists competing in their sport, right? And they were coming to watch us compete. It was pretty incredible, and I think that is really the trajectory. That's really the path for what we're doing here, and not so much whether you're worried about challenge matches or
Yeah.
those types of events. This is pure bracket arm wrestling at the national and international level, and again, I'm very fortunate to have incredible partners like the team in Canada, Joey and Ashley and Chris, they're doing there, and then the people that brought in, like yourself and Santiago, Daniel,
Yeah.
Noel, like in Mexico, and Joe. Like, we've built a really good team here, and we're just expanding, and we're just
Yeah.
going to keep adding more countries to North America under the North American umbrella, and our whole goal is to help get everybody, you know, being able to see that level. And when I say see that level, I mean understand that level, right? Being able to say, I understand what this is about now. And I said this time, if you don't see it sometimes, you don't go see an event like what's going on. You don't see the World Championships. You don't see it. You don't really understand. You just think it's another tournament
Yeah.
until you really start to understand. So that's going to be our continued goal here, is trying to just bring in more countries, help the countries we have develop more and more and more, be able to bring bigger and bigger teams. We've got the World Championships coming up in Canada in 2027 for the 50th anniversary of the WF. And then in 2026, we'll be at the same venue in Ottawa for the North American Championships. Typically, we're doing those events here in the more the central, Mexico and below, just because it makes it more accessible for the rest of the athletes that
Yeah.
we're developing on. And it really is going to continue to be our goal. I know some guys, in the U.S. are like, in Canada. Like, why? It has to be, can we have it in the States? Can we have it in Canada? The problem is, it's just we would be leaving out the developing countries that we want to bring along. It's more, again, it's about the athletes, about the countries, it's about what we're doing. So we're going to go, continue to do that down there, except for Ottawa, because it's kind of the precursor. Typically, you do the North American, your Continental Championship a year before the same place that you're going to do the Worlds as well. So it's kind of the dry run, if you will. So
Yeah.
we'll have that one, that'll take place in Canada. After that, the expectation is we're going to continue to put these in, Mexico and below, so that we can, get more and more of our developing countries and athletes
Yeah.
in there.
And if you're listening to this conversation is just about the athletes. See, Simon is speaking historically what he's done and what he has learned, working hand in hand with the administrative part of the arm wrestling world, right? But it's a conversation. And I'm sitting here listening to you. It's a conversation about athletes, you know. And I was just talking with a friend from Mexico that was telling me that he wanted to go to North American Championships if I could help him. And I started explaining to him that he had to, contact his national federation and everything. And he was telling me some stuff, and I was like, bro, don't believe what everyone says. Just give yourself a chance to be part of this. Go see it, go live it, and then you can decide if you want to keep doing this.
Yeah.
I guarantee you will be back once you go once.
Yeah.
So don't believe what anybody would say about anyone. Just give yourself, be an athlete and give yourself the chance to experience it. Because like Simon said, uh, he wanted to be the best. How many times have you been world champion?
17 times.
17 times world champion. See? And if you don't want to be world champion, that's cool. Do it your way. But there's people that wanna reach that level, and even in guys like me, I would have loved to had the chance when I was in my peak, in my prime, to know all this so that I could try and become world champion. And now my drive, what I want to do is give that chance that I didn't have to the younger generation. And I know that's what you want.
Absolutely.
And you're still doing it. You're still world champion. You're still being world champion. You're still competing, and you're still winning championships. And you still wanting to give the younger guys, the guys that come after us, the opportunity to be world champions. So it's a noble gesture for any human being to work for somebody else's dream.
And I think the other big thing that I think is, a lot of, again, I say in the US doesn't really have, in Canada, we have, the big sports, right? So then again, a lot, high school kids don't really get into it as much. But for a lot of the other countries that are part of North America, you're actually in a much better position than we are in the US from a perspective of being able to easily speak to your government about sponsorship and getting involved and doing big things in the sport. So really the effort goes in there because it's going to help those groups become what we'd all wish it would be, right? Which is where you have sponsored athletes, you have governments paying for you to go to travel the world, helping you with your clubs and your programs and your expenses and everything you need to do here, getting it into schools and events and things that you can, larger events. I think there's an incredible opportunity for the sport, particularly, and we talked about it before. It's a relatively inexpensive sport for people to partake in, and the diversity of you as a person brings a lot to that element of, some guy's going to be bigger and stronger, somebody's going to be longer and taller, bigger arms, bigger hands, and longer arms, and there's a place for everybody in this sport. And I think that's what's really going to be the driver in getting the younger groups, younger athletes to come in, is, again, if they don't really have those kind of major sports you're going to chase around, baseball, football, basketball, etc. But you can get into something like this relatively inexpensively. You can try your hand at it.
Yeah, and even if you feel like I'm not good enough to play basketball, I'm not good enough to play football, there's a place for you in arm wrestling. Like Nugo, the guy that just pulled that Ace versus West, he's really little. I mean, he can't play basketball.
Yeah.
Maybe he doesn't have the ability to play other sports, but you can see how strong he is in arm wrestling. So he found a
Yeah.
place for him. And that's what I keep telling, kids. It's a cheap sport. You can do it anywhere practically. And there's a space for you. You can do it. Like and even you can start young, you can start at an older age. So I think arm wrestling is for everyone. It's not just for the gifted, it's for everyone.
Yeah, I mean, and if you get that right marriage of you find people sometimes that are just naturally good at this. So there's the people who work really hard and they find ways to train and become good at the sport, and there's the people who I felt like I kind of was like it just suited me. Like it was just something that I was good at from the beginning, and then you're able to kind of go further and how much work you put into it to decide what you're going to be able to do with it. But there's always a place for people and there's always an opportunity
Yeah.
to and I've seen people who were terrible when they got started,
Yeah.
like and progress and progress and progress and get really good at the sport
Yeah.
because they
You're
put the
telling
work in
me.
and they do it. I mean, and I was just actually, next week I go to Colorado Springs for the Department of Defense Wounded Warrior Games, um, to demonstrate the sport for the Wounded Warrior athletes who will be competing at that event out there. Um, and this is probably one of the most important things I think we are doing is how adaptable. When you look at adaptive arm wrestling, you really only have to have one arm, and you don't even have to have all your fingers, and you can still arm wrestle. So there's, people who have had upper ambulatory issues, lower ambulatory issues, cerebral issues, audio issues, visual issues. There is a place for you in
Yeah,
arm
arm
wrestling.
wrestling is the more inclusive sport in the
I
world.
don't. There isn't anything, and I'm really intrigued to go out to this event and see the adaptive sports they have, because I don't know of anything that's even close to being as adaptive as arm wrestling is. And so that is a really big thing, I think, and they have a really interesting message, right? They put these games on not just because they need to have some recreation for these injured soldiers. They put these games on because this is part of the path to becoming well again, right? Even if you're physically well, it's part of path becoming emotionally well. It's part of the path of becoming mentally well. It's part of the path of being just finding again a place in the world where you don't feel so limited because
Yeah.
you can do other things. And so that's really their message they're doing all the time. And I think, again, there's nothing as adaptive as arm wrestling. So they can open a vast world for, para athletes, to get involved in the sport. We just have not, it's not been the easiest thing to do. I think this is the right path, is to
Yeah.
go out and show it to other people who are already competing. And I've already talked to people who know other athletes, soldiers who've had they can't do any of the sports that they're doing. Like they can't do the sport they're doing. There was a guy that I met. He is amputated above the knee, but he would do para BJJ, Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. His buddy had the same injury, has the same injury. He became friends in this process, but he was now going to lose the other leg, and he won't be able to compete anymore because he doesn't really have a good base for him to be able to do it. It's just not something he feels he's going to be any good at because he's competing against guys who have a good driving leg. So it becomes completely, he's lost his sport now, right? And I think I'm hoping that people will be able to see and they go, I know somebody who's looking for a sport, and what arm wrestling can provide is for them, right? Is give
Yeah.
them an opportunity. So I'm really excited about going and doing it, and I hope it turns out really well, and that people really can see what it can do for them as well.
Yeah. We were talking about this yesterday, and I kept thinking and going it over in my head, and I think I will do the same thing because I know people that work in veteran affairs in Puerto Rico, and maybe they could help me find those people that have had injuries or amputations or injuries for whatever. So maybe we can get them into sport here in Puerto Rico because actually there's more availability in government funding for the para
Certainly,
than the
yeah,
you know regular people.
yeah,
And I think it could be like it could help you know the sport, like going through there and then growing into
sure.
all parts of the sport.
And we were very close to getting into the Paralympics games in France. We just didn't have enough diversity. Excuse me. Take a little water. We just didn't have enough diversity of countries and people, genders, to be able to actually make it. So we have to try again, grow our para,
Yeah.
try again, and then see if we can get to the next one.
Yeah. I thought I thought that we were gonna get it on 2028, or we lost it.
Yeah, we didn't get, that's exactly what I'm sorry. I'm talking about we lost for 28 because we didn't have enough diversity of men, women, and enough different
Okay.
countries. We are, though, in the para Asian games,
Oh,
para Asian youth para Asian games. So arm wrestling will be in that event. So we're making continual strides in doing this. It's
yeah.
it just takes time,
Yeah. It
unfortunately,
takes
right,
time,
to get through all the.
and it takes time, and it takes people that are they persevere in what they're doing to keep trying, because some people just quit. Just go like, oh, I tried this 5 times and it didn't work. No, you got to keep doing it. You got to
Yeah.
keep trying, and just if you fail, just keep doing it, keep trying, because that's what we want for the sport. And I learned when I was a little bit younger. I didn't persevere that much. I learned that when my daughter was born. She was born really premature, and she was in the NC and pediatric NCU, right? And I had to wait and wait and wait and wait, and that's the kind of situation that you just can't quit. You just gotta wait for it.
Yeah.
So I learned to persevere and have patience through that, and I think that's what helped me doing what I do for the sport in Puerto Rico, and I really look up to you, and I'm trying to follow in your footsteps on what you're doing, and that's why I always keep looking for other countries in my area, so I could get them in and help them grow their sport in their country and join us. And that's why we have a trip next week, and we're going to Santo Domingo to help the guys over there get organized and everything, and motivate them to join us. And they are really positive about it, and they wanna join. They want to go to the North American Championships in Ottawa. I made contact with the guys in Belize, or Belize. I don't know how you pronounce that. I think I anyway, in Spanish is Belize. So and I'm trying to, you know, see what they got, and trying to help them to join, and in the future they can be in the North American Championships. So I think we are in the same page, and we work towards the same thing. And we are very fortunate to have leaders like Simon in our sport, doing what he does. He doesn't make any money out of this, and I understand this because we lose money all the time in arm wrestling, and he just does it for the love of it, and I admire you for that. And
I appreciate it.
I try to do the same thing. In Puerto Rico we say uno se jopa hasta donde le da la sábana, because I'm not rich, but I try to to put everything I got into the sport to help it grow in Puerto Rico, and every way I can help. So we are really fortunate to have you. But Simon Berriochoa is a man of mystery, and I wanna talk to you. I don't think many people know this. What do you do for a living?
So I'm the head of global operations for an event company, the world's largest event company.
Okay.
So, look, I've been most of my career was almost kind of accidentally, but I started running warehouses and production plants and those kinds of things, and that led to other elements of the operations world. And I spent a long time at probably about 12 years at what people know to be now Blizzard Activision. So I was in software companies, running operations, running the plants and the distribution centers, call centers, those types of things. And then I went to Rosetta Stone, and we took them public and changed them to a SaaS based software product from basically it was a CD in a box always. And then we started developing online products and tools where you can get apps and you can get things more directly and easier than having me ship you a box. And I spent another 11 years there. And as time went on, I was looking to do something else. And I ended up at this event company called Cvent. And it's the world's largest event company. It's 25 years old now. It's still founder run. He's still the CEO of the company. And yeah, I've been there 7 years. Wasn't sure that was what I was going to be doing, but that's just kind of how it turned out. And been there 7 years and gotten to take on some good projects here. More recently, as I just take more and more of the the operations pieces we
Yeah.
do for the event. So like it'll be everything from physically putting the equipment in Amazon's show, right, for them to people come in and register and check and get their badges and do all those things, as well as the software we provide for them to manage programs they're going to do, hotels. Whenever you're trying to book a hotel room for an event you're going to have, and you're trying to do your athletes coming in to get rooms there, and you have to get the rooms. That's a lot of the software stuff is what we provide to hotels and those types of things. So
Yeah.
I've always just been kind of an operations guy, and my job is to solve
Yeah.
problems. And so I guess I do that everywhere, I guess, right? So I get into
Yeah.
arm
Yeah. You
wrestling, it's
actually do.
just try to solve problems, like
You
and get this
actually
stuff
do.
out of the way. So
You do that. I mean, in my experience, as you actually, that's what you do. Like, I think you do it like unconsciously.
yeah, it probably drives a lot of people crazy because not everybody always wants me trying to solve their problems, but it is kind of way I spend great deal of my time and the way I look at stuff just to
Yeah.
expedite through. I mean, and look, I think this is having the right people and the like-minded people. Again, solutionists, right? In the partners we have. If you look at the people we have that head up the countries that we have now, um, we have people who are very much of that same version. Like I think I don't know that we would have or we could work easily with somebody who is a bit more of just a politician, right? Because their focus would be completely different what we're trying to do. We're going to keep trying to everyone's got to have to pitch in and work. If you're a country in North America that is under our umbrella of the North American Arm Wrestling Federation, you have a job, you have responsibilities. You do a lot of our media and stuff. You're doing. You're out there finding other countries that are fledgling out there that would like to become part of it and spreading the word throughout this region. We have that is what we're supposed to be doing, and I think is provided we keep finding those kinds of people who have the same passion for it you are and the willingness to do for others in the process. I think we're going to keep getting more more and more. We went from literally it was we had the U.S. and Canada, and then Costa Rica had come in, U.S., Canada, Costa Rica, and then we started adding more and more countries as we've gone on, and I think we're just going to keep doing that every year.
Yeah.
So
I believe we're gonna keep growing every year. At least the nation. My one nation a year is great. Maybe we can have more, but one nation until we cover all what it's North America.
I think there's 82 considered countries and territories in North America, so
Yeah.
we've got a lot to choose from. So it would be
Yeah.
and really just getting to standardize. We were just talking about this yesterday. Was kind of getting to the standardized starter kit, if you will, right? So here's the table, here's the riser platforms that we're working on getting. We're making them ourselves. We're having a manufacturer make them, um, and be able to provide that along with a software kit that we use the WF, and just say this is how countries get started. Like get to a place where we're big enough where those are a lot of the limitations you're going to see from countries we bring in. One, they think they have to be way more organized than they are just to get started. So they sit around and do nothing, right? They kind of just don't really get started because they think it's way beyond them. And then when they make the contact with the right person and we can explain to them,
It's
no,
simple.
really, you get your group together, you have your president, you get your board together. We need to work on making sure you have trained referees so that you guys can start having your events, using the proper WF rules. And then again, standardized tables, standardized bracket process, right? We can get countries started that way and kind of just cookie cutter help them get started and start bringing in and start seeing their desire to become, to raise the sport in their country by giving them the tools to do it, because it's not always that easy, right? It's tough sometimes, and I think a lot of the groups that we talk to really just think they're too small to even get started, and they just sit around and never do anything. And now with you, I think with the group we have now, who's kind of running through Central America and the Caribbean, showing people the way, right? I think that's a super important part of what you guys are doing right now, and what is our goal here from North America.
Yeah. Can you explain that really interests me? Like NAAF, our organization is working on platforms and that sort of stuff for the arm wrestling tables.
Yeah, I think we're trying to get to the right version where we can say this is the table we want used, and it's not like it's a mandatory thing as much as it's available. Here's the table. Here's they're not completely automatic, obviously, but the riser system that we use at Worlds, you get that. You get the standardized, along with standardized rule set, referee training. We're putting a lot of effort into really transforming kind of how the referee process works and certification, because it's super important that every country starts to have their own developed and prolific referees in the sport. So you can, otherwise you have to constantly fly people in who have,
Yeah.
more experience, um, and let that, because look, a good referees make good arm wrestlers, right? Because you're going to be able to, when you start having really good refereeing, you're going to have better arm wrestlers because they're going to learn how the sport properly. And so just from those things, the table, the platforms, the software to be able to run the brackets, the rules, right? The what little bit of equipment we have, whether it's proper shirts, the way you're doing the straps, um, and just being able to get these countries maybe if they're going to spend money or whatever we could possibly do to help them, here's kind of a starter. This is how you get started. And then we start working on developing the referees. Again, the certification program we're trying to do for the referees completely online, where literally every country can take this thing, dub it, or
Yeah.
in their own language underneath, but you're learning. And obviously, as you know, that English is the official language of the
Yeah.
WF, so you have to know these words. And I can't tell you how many times I go to Worlds and these athletes are competing at the World Championships don't. And so to me, that's a big disadvantage, that they're not doing that. But we want to be the country where, the continent where we're making sure all of our athletes know that, right?
Yeah.
Everyone
Exactly.
understands all the words in English, all the signals, so that they can be as effective at Worlds as they possibly can.
Actually, I think in North America, like NAAF, I think we are 93% of the athletes know the rules, the words, and the signals. I'm really confident that, like, when we went to North American Champions in Costa Rica, we didn't have that much of an issue with that.
Yeah.
Everybody got it, you know. So I think we are ahead on that field, and yes, people got to learn that if you are an arm wrestler, it's always good to be a ref too. Get certified, start refing, because it's very important to have your own refs.
Yeah. Well, and even you're passing on to other people and just developing people, and you're getting to see more good quality refing in your,
Yeah,
because again, and unfortunately, it's gotten, in my opinion, here in the last several years, it's gotten very loose and very
yeah,
out of line, particularly in the U.S. Um, because people are always looking for that gimmick, right? I want to do this differently. I want to do that differently. So I'm going to set my league apart from this. If you put, I don't care. It's funny because, like, tell this people, like, somebody asked me a question. A kid asked me about running elbow fouls, and there's no such thing, right?
no,
In the WF, there's no running elbow fouls. And what when I say this to people, if you think about it, think about all the arm wrestlers in the entire world, right? And the reality is, many, vast majority of these people are under the WF umbrella, because those teams, if you are part of Kazakhstan, you're under the Kazakhstan national team, which goes up to the WF. So the only rules ever are WF rules, right? Turkey, Ukraine, I don't care, it doesn't matter where you go. Since those are the national entities from those countries that roll up to the WF, 99.9% of the arm wrestlers in the world use WF rules. So the idea that you would be running around and inventing rules, or thinking I should do this differently in my little club, or I should do this differently in my promotion, just seems silly, right? Because why would you be doing something different than what they do, that what 99.9% of the arm wrestlers in the world do?
yeah.
And it's an important factor to standardize that, just because I think that's, again, better arm wrestlers, right? Better view for the sport, because people, it
Yeah.
makes sense to
I
people,
always say
consistent
that
rules.
the credibility of your event is based on the refing. If the refing is good, your event is good, because the complaints will be less or none, and people will go like, "Yeah, that seemed fair," or "That seems fair." At least it's the same for everyone.
Consistency, right? I mean, I
Consistency.
tell people all the time, I don't like to ever use the word fair. I try to, like, you correct, right? There's a correct way to do this, because there's nothing fair about me having to grab some guy's hand that's huge, compared to mine,
Yeah.
and be sitting like this. That's not fair, but it's correct,
Yeah.
right? So it is just how the sport works. And I think if you can teach that correctness, I think that also permeates into people's training, because so much of what I see also from a lot of these alternative rule sets is that they don't train properly. They don't know the rules. They don't use the proper rule set, so they don't train properly, and they get into tournaments and they lose, and they were just complaining about the refereeing because they didn't learn how to compete properly, because they weren't following the right rule set to begin with.
Exactly.
Uh, So
Exactly.
I think it's an important part of the development of the sport, especially with the youth, right? Especially as you're getting the younger kids
Exactly.
involved in the sport, you really need to make sure they understand the rules
Yeah.
correctly.
So Simon, what's in the near future for NAAF right now? The North American Championships, right?
Yep, we have the upcoming North American Championships in Ottawa in 2026.
It's gonna be cold.
Could be.
Yeah, it's gonna be cold. It's gonna
Which
be
is it?
cold.
We often get we get spoiled. It's funny because we usually do we do this stuff down here for North American Championships in the southern countries here because that's how you get the Canadians out of Canada, right? Because
Yeah.
in February and March when they're freezing to death up there still, you get them to come down.
Yeah.
So it might be a little bit of a they're hoping for an early spring, but yeah, it might be a little colder than what you're used to in past years. But so we got that event coming up. We're really working on organizing our calendars in North America so that we're getting all the countries to try to have their national championships in very organized fashion so that we can make sure that we're creating opportunities. So we're getting to a place now between you take every country's national championship, you take the North American championships, you take Pan American championships, you take the Central American championships, World Combat Games. I'm working on the World Masters Games, which you're getting the sport in there. Um, the World Strength Games is another one that I'm working on, where is getting an event in there, and the World Championships. You're literally going to have an international event, or either your nationals or an international event, every month of the year, right? And that's a lot, right? And
That's
the
a lot.
infrastructure doesn't really, at the moment, support it. So this is where you start to get the government entities and in the countries we're developing to be able to see how much they can monetarily support it, how they can support by having the event. That there's one of the events that we're talking about here is going to
Yeah.
take place in that country, and being able to get the sport of arm wrestling into it. So really, what you're seeing in the future is just probably more and more of these events, these really national level, international, and again, what I would just say is kind of Olympic level version of arm wrestling happening more and more for each of these countries, and then trying to develop these countries into becoming more self-sufficient with help from their government, so that it's not going constantly out of pocket, and building the para teams. It's a super important thing for us. Like again, it was the youth. I think it's the World's Youth Asian Games where we have the para there, which was a big win for the
Yeah.
sport, and it's going to make a big difference in how we get seen, how the para gets to advance.
Yeah. And how do you see the the sport in North America developing in the Caribbean and Central America? How do you see it moving through all the nations?
Well, I think it's, as we were talking a little bit before, it's about showing people the way and giving them the tools, the basic toolkits to be able to be effective at this and get moving forward. Again, most countries feel like they're not big enough. They don't have enough going on. And we've really simplified everything to a way where it's saying, look, we can help you get started without it being so complicated. And it starts with one. Like I can't tell you how many countries I've seen that they're new countries to the WF. It's one guy. He's the president. He's their only referee. He's their only athlete, and he shows up there. One, maybe two people, and they get started, and then it's more. Costa Rica was exactly the same way,
Yeah.
right? When they got started, and as time goes on, you just bring more and more people. It gets expanding, and I think I'm really excited for what is again kind of it's the dream for all of us in the sport. To be quite honest, is to be like the European teams are, where you're government subsidized, right? You're getting paid they're paying your travel, you're paying your expenses. A lot of these countries get paid to even train. They get additional perks for being exceptional athletes within the country, and
Yeah.
they get paid for their gold medals when they bring them back to the country. Um, we'd all love to be in that place. I actually think that, kind of outside of US and Canada, the potential for getting that done is very high because, again, you guys have great access to your leadership to be able to have the kind of conversations where with just US and Canada are so big and
Yeah.
so politically complicated that it's just makes it pretty hard. We don't get to just walk in and have conversations with the minister of sport and try to pitch them on
Yeah.
the idea that they should be putting money into arm wrestling. But I think
Exactly.
these countries have that opportunity, and I think it's going to be an important thing for those countries to grow and see the opportunities. And also, that's another thing we start trying to figure out how to create a template for those countries to be able to go and start talking to their governments and show. Because again, governments aren't huge fans of just handing money to anybody who walks in their door
Yeah.
and says, "Hey, I'm having this sport. I'd like you guys to fund us." They want somebody who's going to certify them. And the World Arm Wrestling Federation is the certifying entity of arm wrestling in the
Yeah.
entire world. And by default, obviously, the North American Arm Wrestling Federation, being under the World Arm Wrestling Federation, has exactly that same
Yeah.
luxury. So, in denotion. So,
People have to understand that they will ask you under what organization are you are, and they ask you that because they want to feel safe, and they want to make sure that if they give you funding, who's going to be related to, and what are you going to do with it?
sure.
You know.
And you look at all the other sports, and and again, I think if you look into the politics of it, every other sport at the Olympic level has all of this complexity and more,
Yeah.
right? Because there is a lot of money going into U.S. track and field, right? There's a ton of money going into it, so they're very cautious about what they do, who the money goes to, how it's used, and if they have administrative issues, they are very much make sure that those people are made ineligible to do it. So it's just, I know it doesn't sit well always with everyone in the sport, but the simple reality is at the Olympic level, this is what happens, right?
Exactly.
It's not just as I have the freedom. If you want to be, I'm an American, I'm free to go arm wrestle wherever I want to. You can't tell me where arm wrestle. Then you can go do those things, but it's just like a guy who's was on his high school track team doesn't gets to say I want all the same rights they have from U.S. track and field if he's not going to be on the national team. Like
Exactly.
it only comes with the sacrifices you make to
Exactly.
that entity in that process.
The investment, because you got to invest. If you want to, every athlete in whatever sport has to accept that it's an investment in yourself, and then when you get to that level, you will get perks or whatnot, right?
Yeah, well, that's what we say. You got to get into those programs where that's available. I mean, arm wrestling is lived off, and I say this all the time: is with if there wasn't all the extra hype, arm wrestling probably never could have got off the ground because everybody back in the day had to tell them they were putting on. They didn't just say, "Hey, me and some buddies going to come by and do some arm wrestling and probably drink some beer and would you guys mind sponsoring that and giving us prize money and doing that?" Nobody goes for that. They're telling them it's a national championship, it's a state championship, it's a world championship. People would say this all the time. So that hype was used to build the sport. And I'm not saying there was anything wrong with what's happened with that process, but you really have to get to a place where you build something first and then show them you have something built. Arm wrestling for too long, in my opinion, has been saying, "I'm trying to build something. Let me see who I can go get to help." Well, that help's going to be very limited when you do that. If you build something first and then say, "I have this. We're going to do this. This is what it is. This is how big it is. I'm interested in you being a part of it, but I've already got it built and I'm doing it whether you come along or not."
Ex-
Right? It doesn't really like I think and I hate to pick on some of the other ones like the WAL, but you look like as big as the WAL was supposed to be and all the things were going to come with it. He lost his sponsor in Monster and had to cancel the championships. And so you went like, okay, this is a little nuts, right? Like you're
yeah,
you're saying you're going to do this, and then your sponsor drops out, and now the whole thing implodes. You have to build something yourself first, and then be able to try to get other people to come along. But you're going to do it whether they do or not, and then you find the
exactly.
next person. If it's not going to be them, it's going to be somebody else. But we've been plagued, I think, by that trying to get outside forces to help us build the sport for too long, and it's just it's proven over 50 plus years that it just doesn't
Yeah,
work.
it doesn't work, and I keep thinking about why we keep doing and going that way, going outside. Help me build this, and that's at least I started building this myself. And like you just said, I'm moving and I'm gonna do it with or without you.
Yeah.
And
If they come, great, and you get sponsors and get people going to be involved. That's
yeah,
fantastic. But you got to show them you have something. Nobody wants to help you take on your
yeah,
pet
you
project when
you
you don't know
gotta
how to
sell
build it.
something. See, and the other guy has to know what they're buying.
Yeah,
See, and you cannot go to ask for sponsorship to somebody who doesn't know what it is that you do.
yeah,
And you gotta show them. You gotta, okay, this is what I built. This is what I'm offering. Would you be willing to come with me? And I think that's the way to go.
yeah.
You gotta build it, and you gotta have it, and it has to work. And it has to work with or without them. So it got to be a consistency going forward
Yeah.
every time, no matter what, it's gonna happen.
the truth. And I think that's we're making much bigger strides in that regard now. We
Yeah.
used to be, like I said, just running around finding. If I get somebody, I know some guy who wants to sponsor something. I mean, how many times have you heard this story? I mean, just literally, somebody was supposed to be sponsoring something, and then they had a problem with their sponsor, and then the event has to change, or they can't do it the next year. Like it has been the history of the sport, and I think it's proven not to work, and we're going to have to do something
Yeah,
different if you're going to be
exactly.
successful at it.
You cannot keep making the same decisions expecting different
Yeah,
outcomes.
yeah.
So,
Unfortunately,
so Simon, thank you for coming to Puerto Rico and helping us with our event. Is there anything else you would like to add uh, for the people that's watching about arm wrestling and what we're doing and where we're going?
I think that the what we really need to do, and what I'm hoping people will either help us in getting it out there, as well as um, be looking forward to embrace the idea of it. I think we're getting to a place now with technology that we could, as I said before, we used to go get flyers from one event to the next. You didn't even
Yeah,
there was a phone number on it. The closest you ever came to finding out, everybody's just calling the person's number on there and saying, "What's going on with this event? Like, there's something missing. Where is
yeah,
it at? Like, whatever." That was what we had. I think we're in a different place now where we can use the tools more effectively that we have, and again, just like even the referee training, right? So just getting that to where something, one of my pet projects here, to where it becomes a completely online tool with a professional level of training. I mean, most of us have done some kind of training thing at our jobs where they walk you through, even if it's the harassment training or something where they're telling you all the things you can't do. Getting that to a place where that could just permeate the entire world, right? And everyone can dub it into their own language for the training element of it, but still have the English words that you have to know, show all the actions, show the process, and keep that continually updated because you built a really good tool there. And I think that concept we can do in other areas of the sport as well. Like there's so much training stuff going on in YouTube, and so there's
yeah,
entire countries who've learned their entire version of arm wrestling from out on YouTube, and you can tell it when you arm wrestle them because they don't have the three-dimensional physical element that you need to understand. They're seeing something in two dimensions and trying to emulate that without really understanding all the pieces. But I think with the technology we have now, we're going to be able to start doing more stuff. So it's the training. Like everybody always wants the kids. The kids yesterday they had questions. They wanted to learn how to
yeah,
do stuff. How do I do this? How do I do that? And it's all good. And I think it's something we should be doing for them. But I like the idea that we create a really formal repository of stuff to do, and that includes how do you get involved. That includes countries that may say, "Hey, look, I'm interested in doing this. We're arm wrestling here now on my island, and how do I get in?" Well, again, better technology, better sense of information, and consistency, right? So that people can see those things, and then you get tiny little tweaks, but the information is
yeah,
constantly out there to help grow the sport at this level and get more people involved from a perspective of I get emails every day from people saying, where do I sign up? What do I have? Like they know there's so little information outside of being an arm wrestler. So, and usually what you're getting is just kind of social media fodder. I really would encourage people to kind of think about how do they, in their own microcosm, start to develop that type of how do I get all the good information out there
yeah.
for all to see. So when just some new person from a new country stumbles across it, they have a good resource. It's important. I think that's stuff for us to look forward to in the sport as well. I think that's going to be an important piece of
Yeah.
how we grow.
So if you got to this part of the show, I hope you liked it. Please follow all social media from NAAF in Facebook and Instagram. Uh, it's been a pleasure hanging out with
Been
you
my
this
pleasure. Yeah.
weekend
Yeah.
and having you over and doing this show. We've learned a lot about your story, and that's what I want people to know, your story, why you are who you are and how you got there. So I hope all you guys enjoy the show. Any questions you have for Simon, you can leave it in the comments and we will do our best to answer them. So this is the end of the show with Simon Berriochoa, Valerie Beach. That's right there. From from Mayagüez, Puerto Rico to the world. Thank you guys for watching. Hit that like button so the algorithm express it. That's it.
Thank you for that.